Yes, this evening. Please be seated. I trust everyone's had a moment to both admire the beautiful art and read the First Nations recognition. And I'll call the meeting to order. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda? Councillor Thompson.
Yes.
Moved, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. Question, all in favor? Contrary, carried. On the minutes, could I have a motion to approve the minutes? Councillor Watt.
We're all over. I would like to recommend that the following minutes be adopted as circulated. January 15, 2024, open session and regular council meetings.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Gambioli.
Yes.
Question, all in favor? Contrary, carried. Thanks. We'll move on to the local area plan. Councillor Gambioli. Or should we have Mr. Bailey? Did you want to make any presentation this evening?
Mr. Hawkins has a substantial
Mr. Hawkins?
presentation.
Yes.
Great.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council, members of the public. So yes, as described, this presentation is to introduce a proposed amendment to the OCP, or Official Community Plan, specific to Ambleside Local Area Plan and only relating to the apartment area. So for parts of the presentation, I'll begin by recalling the context and process to date. I'll summarise the bylaw and, more importantly, the revisions that council directed to it. Also, as council directed, I'll be presenting some three-dimensional visualizations, and I'll conclude with recommending council give first reading and set the date for a public hearing. So regarding context and process, just very briefly, the bylaw in question only relates to the blue area on the map, so that's the apartment area. It does not relate to the neighbourhood area in yellow or the commercial area in pink. And also, just to be very clear, the subject bylaw, I'll describe its nature. It relates to the OCP, or Official Community Plan. So council already has within its Official Community Plan policies that relate to the existing apartment area, and this would update those. And the function of an OCP is to identify the kinds of housing that council could consider and where. Importantly, the OCP also includes design guidelines specific to the apartment area. No changes to these are proposed. So the design guidelines regulate things like the look and feel, the design of buildings. I'll also take a moment to clarify what tonight is not about. So this is an OCP amendment as described. It's an area-wide long-range policy document. It's not changes to zoning. So included within that statement, it's not a reconsideration of protecting the 30 purpose-built rental sites. I'm flagging that just because I'm aware there's been significant public interest and correspondence. That bylaw was defeated at the end of November last year. Council can, of course, direct any next steps for those sites tonight or at any open meeting, but should council choose to do so at any time, that would be a separate bylaw, i.e. the zoning bylaw, not the OCP. So a long way of saying that the OCP bylaw in front of council tonight can proceed irrespective of any potential direction council may provide regarding the zoning of 30 purpose-built rental sites.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Just on that note, I believe that council will give direction on that issue of the protecting the rental housing sites sometime in the not distant future. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Your Worship. And then also in terms of just recalling the process, so one slide on this, the engagement took place spring last year, a significant engagement push. I'm being very brief in summarising 350 pages of transcribed public input, but as it relates to the apartment area, the key finding is that the context is very much set. It was, in fact, set 75 years ago in 1959, but really what we heard from the community is that we should be looking for targeted opportunities to regenerate stock, to add diversity, and do what we can to address affordability. Council received those engagement findings in July last year, and again, specific to this piece within the endorsed LAP framework, directed staff to prepare OCP amendment bylaws for the apartment area. The first proposed bylaw was discussed substantively October 30th last year, and out of that conversation, council directed that staff make some revisions to specify heights, to provide more options for large site infill, and also to visualise the potential change before coming back to seek first reading again and setting the date of a public hearing, and the bylaw in front of council responds to that discussion and direction that we received last October. So regarding the bylaw itself, I think a key point is that it's really aiming to provide a range of housing opportunities over the coming decades. So the 1800 block of Marine, it's already allowed to be residential only in use, so the proposal is to maintain that existing 4-story provision, but also add diversity with a 5-story rent-to-own option, and then in a mid-rise 6 to 8-story form, enable things like rental apartments, seniors apartments, or a combination of strata and below-market rental. The same mid-rise 6 to 8-story form is proposed for lands very close to here, district lands on the south face of the 1500 block of Fulton, with council to determine the mix of tenure and market. Within the subject lands, there are 4 community use or public assembly sites. They're predominantly churches. The proposal within the bylaw is that there'd be many options for these sites. They could be a 4-story form that provides strata, or 4 stories at a slightly higher density if there's an ability to re-provide a public use on site. 6 stories should the project be rental. And if there's a way to combine rental and new public use, or strata and below market, then that could also be contemplated within 6 stories, but at a slightly higher density of 2.75 FAR. The subject lands also include 5 existing age-restricted sites, and the proposal is that as these buildings age and as our community continues to age, that there could be replenished and expanded seniors housing on those same sites at a mid-rise form. There are also opportunities for new strata apartment ownership. There are 2 former land use contract sites on the eastern edge of the subject area, and also 6 sites generally along Marine Drive on the western side. What these sites have in common is that they're all currently lower-rise wood frame buildings, and the proposal is that they could regenerate to mid-rise forms similar to what currently surrounds them. And there's also a proposal for 8 narrow waterfront sites. Today, these are typically things like duplexes and quadplexes. The proposal is to expand in missing middle options at 3 stories. So by that, I mean things like townhouses and row houses. And in terms of all the land uses on this slide and the locations for them, there have not been any changes since the direction in July. But what has been revised further to Council's direction last October is measuring heights, not only relying on stories. So the previous bylaw referred only to stories. The bylaw in front of council does include heights, and the general approach behind that is we're assuming 10 feet per typical floor-to-ceiling residential story, plus a 10-foot allowance for the building, and that allowance would be to achieve things like varied roof lines, more interesting design features, stronger articulation, respond to varying site conditions, and so on. A couple of examples of the math, but it's fairly straightforward. If it's a 10 foot per story plus 10 for the building, then 4 stories would be 50 feet, 6 stories would be up to 70 feet, and so on. There's a few notes on the slide. The first is more of a public confession that I'm too old and too English to not use feet, but the bylaw itself uses meters consistent with other district bylaws. More substantively, the second note, all these heights should be considered up-tos. That's true for the densities as well, so the maximums may not be achieved on any given site. And then thirdly, as I've already mentioned, all of these land uses and heights would be further controlled by the existing form and character design guidelines. Also on the subject of height, there were a few instances, and you can see them on the map here, where the previous bylaw that was discussed in October indicated that heights would be determined through contextual review of the proposal. The revised bylaw now does set and specify a maximum height of up to 6 to 9 stories, or 70 to 100 feet. And really what we're looking to respond to there is what we understand to be a desire for as much certainty within the bylaw as can reasonably be provided in our area-wide long-range document. And so to derive that figure of 6 to 9 stories, what we've essentially done is brought forward the contextual review and undertaken it as part of this revised bylaw preparation. I'll give just one example of the process behind that, so indicated on the screen there. This is a site at the corner of 14th and Clyde. It's a former land use contract site. And so what might 2 FAR 6 to 9 stories look like? So FAR is how we measure density. It's simply it's floor area ratio, so the ratio of the square footage within a building to the square footage of the lot it sits upon. So 2 FAR could be 50% site coverage at 4 stories. It could also be only 33% site coverage at 6 stories, so more ground plane. could have even less site coverage, 25%, and be 8 stories. So this is just a theoretical massing exercise to illustrate how density and height work together. In practice, not in theory, what would really happen is that should council adopt this bylaw, those maximum up to heights and maximum up to FARs provide an envelope. It would be owners that determined if they wish to apply. Market economics would very much inform what was a viable project. Architects would shape a site-specific response. Staff would review using things like those design guidelines I mentioned. And ultimately, it would be council that decided based on the fit, so what the building looks like, but also what the building contains, its housing. And so it could be that this kind of policy would enable something like image D on the screen there, where it could be 45% site coverage, 8 stories, but a narrow 8 stories located in the space between the two buildings abutting to the north, with things like townhouses fronting the 2 streets. So you could get a mix of the 3 and 4 bedroom townhouse units, as well as the 1 and 2 bedroom apartment units. So it's just an illustration, but it's trying to describe the kinds of things that policy can enable over the coming decades. The second revision that Council directed was to provide more options for 3 large infill sites. These are on the screen here. And what's distinct about these 3 sites is that they're all around 60,000 square feet, which is large, whereas the other apartment sites in Ambleside are typically 20 to 30,000 square feet, so half or a third of the size. The previous bylaw indicated a maximum infill across the site, total FAR of 3. The options in front of Council now in the revised bylaw provide a staggered approach, a more nuanced approach. So we're proposing if the infill building is strata, it would be 2.5 FAR, gross total on the site. If there's a sort of interim combination of strata and rental or rent to own, that would be 2.75. And then the 3.0 maximum FAR could be applied not only to rental projects, but also to co-op infill. And for full transparency and awareness, the proposed policy I'm describing on this slide still retains the language that heights would be determined through contextual review of the proposal. It's the only policy in the revised bylaw that includes that language. All others have been specified. And this is really just having done the analysis. We have 3 sites, 3 contexts, 3 amounts of available space where an infill building could be located. And now with greater options, we also have 3 different scales of density. So it makes picking an absolute limit a little arbitrary, if you like. And so again, for full transparency, so people can understand the potential scale of those kinds of densities. The 3 sites, so Villa Maris, affectionately known as the Pink Palace, the building is in white, the potential infill is shown in yellow at those different densities. And this is not a proposal, this is just to measure the massing. It's an example footprint, 2.5 at the top, and then extruding or adding stories to 2.75 in the middle, and more stories for 3.0 FAR at the bottom. In contrast, looking at one of the other sites, that's one of these large rental infill sites, or existing rental, but for various forms of infill. Those forms could be a 2.5 FAR strata. That could be a 2 buildings proposal. Not necessarily, it could be a 1 building proposal, but if it was 2, then really it's just an exercise in adding stories, 2.75, adding another story to get to 3.0 FAR at the bottom. And the final example, Shorewood Manor, a different site configuration, different opportunities again. Top of screen, 2 very low-rise buildings. Middle of screen, 2.75 FAR could be achieved by adding that 3rd building on the bottom right of the site. And to reach 3.0 FAR would be a question of adding stories. So, for example, on the waterfront to enjoy those views. So really all I'm trying to illustrate here is the potential sense of scale, but also that there will be multiple design options. Could be a 1 or a 2 or a 3 building proposal, depending on those unique site conditions and the varying densities. So I've already begun moving on to this, the visualization piece, but I think this was one of the key inputs staff received in October, was that desire to provide illustrations so that the words don't float in an abstract way, so that people can really understand what these kinds of bylaws could lead to over the coming decades. So our approach to that has been to prepare an appendix. It's Appendix C, I believe, attached to the report and the bylaw. What these images do show in Appendix C is existing buildings. They're all in white, always in white, and they've been modelled to scale and to reflect the topography, the slope. And then on colour, or in colour rather, potential buildings have been indicated, colour-coded to the various proposed policies. And what they are is massing studies, and we've included a range of different angles, perspectives, some close-up, some wider angle, looking in different directions. A few caveats on that, important to note. These Appendix C does not show actual buildings. There's no detailed design. We're not proposing any particular architectural response. There's no landscaping. There's no texture, character, etc. So, real buildings would have doors, windows, trees in front, and so on. The images do not show approvals, nor, for that matter, even applications. We're not at the application stage. Policies would guide applications, but should Council adopt these policies and should applications be received, then they, as mentioned, would be subject to detailed design review and Council decision-making. And they also don't show the fact that there will be far fewer buildings than the total build-out that staff have illustrated. And that's because the density increases are, by and large, quite marginal, and that means simply that most sites won't change, at least within the 2041 OCP planning horizon. So, long way of saying that the invitation is to view Appendix C as illustrative in nature, and the intention behind the illustrations is really just to provide council and the community as much understanding as we can about the potential fit of potential new buildings within Ambleside's context. So Appendix C is fairly long. I'll only provide a few examples, but what we see on the screen here is looking northwest, and it's the existing conditions. And those, what we have on the ground today is really the result of a decision made in 1959. What the appendix illustrates is, question mark, perhaps by 2059, it'll certainly take decades, these kinds of housing could fit and relate to existing buildings and slope and context based on these massing studies. And you can see the different colors illustrate the full range of housing opportunities, be they rental, be they ownership, be they townhouses, be they seniors, and so on. There are other wider angle views. This time we're looking northeast, so again, existing conditions, and then how over decades to come this area could evolve to include these additional forms of housing and regenerated sites. The appendix also includes some closer perspectives. So this is the western area. At the foreground, you can see Bellevue Avenue with the existing high-rises. Transecting middle of the screen is Marine Drive. The large green parcel to the right is Memorial Park and the Rec Centre, and Ice Arena and Senior Centre to the left. The policies would enable things like the green buildings, waterfront townhouses, missing middle. Yellow buildings represent infill on those large sites. Pink buildings, new strata ownership. Purple, expanded seniors on site. And blue, the ability to accommodate both community use and new housing opportunities. The central area, so in the background, high-rises on Bellevue. Foreground, high and mid-rises off Duchess and Esquimalt. And really the central area, the key part here is the lighter blue. That's the 1800 block, illustrating the range of potential 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-story residential uses as a way to connect the western and the eastern apartment areas, and more importantly, really provide much more living opportunities directly adjacent to the village, something staff believe would be very supportive to a vibrant village and support local businesses. And finally, moving to the eastern area, here we're looking northeast. The Grosvenor building is perhaps most recognizable in the background. And then again, showing how the area could evolve over the coming decades. In brown, the renewal of land use contract sites. In purple, seniors housing. Green, the district-owned lands close to where we are. And yellow, an example of infill on one of the large lots. So, in conclusion, staff are recommending Council commence consideration of the revised OCP bylaw, which would involve giving it first reading and setting the date for a public hearing, because to the best of staff's ability and understanding, we think it reflects what we heard from the community in terms of the housing opportunities they'd like to see, the priorities that they have in terms of meeting their future needs. It responds to Council's direction from July and October. It provides a broad range of all those different housing types, and also, we hope, in a very balanced way between those various needs. And it intends to situate those through these visualizations within Ambleside's established context. And that concludes staff presentation with thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Members of Council. Mr. Hawkins, just as we go through the process, if I know members of Council have talked about doing a community forum before the public hearing so that there's an opportunity. We actually suggested you and I do it. We've had a little history in life of doing a presentation so that people can come in a much more informal sense and ask questions and have discussion. But if we do that, is there an opportunity? At what stage can we make amendments? Let's say we got through this and there's a lot of focus in this bylaw that there's a limit on the number of stories. And what if we go back out to the community through an engagement and they say, "Ooh, actually that blocks our views. It would be better to have a taller, skinnier building." Can we make amendments to these bylaws before the public hearing or at some stage? What would be the process?
Through your worship, my understanding would be that council, obviously you could amend a bylaw tonight before giving it first reading, but if you wanted to make an amendment to height, then that would not require restarting the process. The Local Government Act focuses on changes to use, to density, and now tenure, but height would not need to be revised for council to proceed with bylaw consideration, to the best of my understanding. And also, should council adopt this bylaw as is, at the time of any zoning, council can also consider DVP's development variance permits for height. So again, should you adopt the bylaw, obviously I'm not trying to get ahead of myself, but after public hearing, etc., then there would also be that site-specific ability to vary height at the time of zoning. So council would have both those options, to my knowledge.
I think, and we'll wait for comments from members of council, but I think in having the local area plan, I think it's council's hope that we would have sufficient flexibility that the market is going to dictate a lot of what's going to happen. We want to see redevelopment. We don't want to discourage redevelopment. Are we putting in this local area plan sufficient flexibility to encourage people to come forward? And that's my question. I'll go to Councillor Snyder.
Do you want an opportunity to answer that question? Mine sort of expands on that a little bit, Mr. Hawkins, and it's just like, and I'm just going to bring to your attention one particular area that was sort of discussed in general terms with council, other councillors, that the height restriction. Now, you mentioned that the height restriction can be changed, but not if it impacts density. So my concern is that the density in a couple of the areas, for instance, I think you had the Strata apartment renewal area near 14th and Clyde being one of those targeted, and you had it at a 2.0 FAR, which would allow up to 9 stories depending on the configuration of the building. I think that also one of the things that the mayor is discussing is the opportunity for the council to take a look at each sort of development as it comes forward. I think that if all of a sudden we decide that it's going to be 9 stories, and worried about limiting and again creating that that ceiling effect as opposed to some variety and variances and what have you. How do we go about discussing before this comes forward or approved any changes to certain areas in density as well?
Through your worship, I think staff's generally, my general comment would be that should council adopt as written or as any directions to amend that council may provide, you would always think of the OCP as 2 things. Firstly, it's a living document. You can always amend it at any time. It's your community plan on behalf of your residents. And then also at a site-specific level, nothing any of us can prevent any applicant coming forward with a proposal for more density, for more height. You always have that ability as the land use authority to pass judgment on a site-specific level based on what you feel the merit is. So nothing in this bylaw would preclude you or any future councils. You would not be fettered in making individual decisions should applications be received. So I think in a way that the question, at least for me as staff, is if council has sufficient level of confidence in what's proposed or something close to what's proposed, then it could be adopted, recognizing there will always be those site-specific things. As the Mayor said, things change over time, land economics change. The future is obviously unknown, so you always have that ability as a local government to provide that site-specific response, but it really depends on if council are not sufficiently comfortable as is, then amendments now make more sense, but if there's a broader overall area-wide level of comfort, then my recommendation would be to deal with any exceptions on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And just as being a complete realist, if we look at the building, and I know we talk about it quite a bit, but at the northeast corner of Clyde and 14th, an FSR of 2 is not going to give anyone an incentive when it's currently 1.75 to try and redevelop that site, and yet, to me, that's a perfect site for redevelopment. In fact, consolidating some of the buildings there could be a real win for the community.
Again, to your worship, I mean, it's entirely council's direction. I obviously, what I provided was a summary. There is also policy in the revised bylaw that indicates that council can consider any changes to either tenure or to FAR. So FAR is the density based on contextual fit and based on your housing priorities. So there is a specific policy that enables you to do that. So it comes down to I think a version of what I said. It depends. If you're broadly happy, then my recommendation would be vary the exceptions. Plan the norm, vary the exception. But if council want to build more certainty in because they have a different vision, then that's absolutely for you to direct me in that direction for any changes.
Members of council, what I would recommend at this point in time is that we proceed to first reading of this bylaw. With respect to community consultation, I don't think it hurts at all for we as council to go out to the community and have an opportunity for a forum so that everybody feels they've had an opportunity. And then if there were any amendments that came out of that process, we could amend it at second reading. Before it goes, we can set a public hearing. We can tell people this is what the process is, but there would be an opportunity to amend the bylaw before it goes into the actual public hearing format.
You want to clarify?
No, I think we could do that. Sorry, Mr. Bailey, correct me if I'm wrong in process here.
I think, Mr. Mayor, we would recommend that if you were to have a community forum, that you would do that before the public hearing. You would get that information.
Yes.
And then you would have a public hearing, and then you would close the public hearing. The challenge, of course, is if you've closed the public hearing, receiving new information. So I think...
No, sorry. I'm suggesting that between now and the public hearing, there'd be one more community forum, an opportunity for people to come forward. And this is not in any way to not completely respect all of the efforts that staff has made. But this is going to be a council document. It is going to be something that we will have to own. And so I think it's reasonable for us to go as well outside of the formal public hearings where people have a few minutes to speak, where there's an opportunity, probably at the seniors center, and for people to come in, maybe talk, give their thoughts, leave, just less formal.
So, Mr. Mayor, that would work, but again, as per Mr. Hawkins, if council were to make revisions around use, density, or tenure, then we would be back to first reading. So if you give it first reading, that's the bylaw moving forward. If you then amend use, density, or tenure, you have to go back to first reading. That's the process in the Local Government Act.
Sorry, Councillor Snyder?
So I'm gathering from that we would be best not giving it first reading this evening if there potentially are changes to it, because if we give it first reading, we're back to the drawing board if we go out and have a public forum, and then all of a sudden through forum and public hearing we want to make changes, we're back to square one. So we would be better off delaying first reading until after having a public forum and these discussions.
Through the mayor to Councillor Snyder, if it was council's wish to hear from the public and potentially make changes to those elements, use, density, or tenure, then that's potentially the case. Again, we're comfortable with the bylaw, and as Mr. Hawkins said, plan for the norm and then manage the exceptions. But if council wants to do that, if you want to go out and get that additional information, recognizing that you may be changing use density or tenure, then that would likely be the most prudent thing to do.
But I don't think it's that big a deal if there were changes. I think it's better to put a bylaw out and say to the community, this is a first reading, but here's your opportunity to come and speak to it. And then make amendments. Sorry, Councillor Watt and then Councillor Gambioli.
Yeah, I just want to go back to something Mr. Hawkins said earlier. So the rental building, issue that has come up in the past, so this is somehow not applicable at this stage?
No, that's a totally separate.
Totally separate,
Totally
okay.
separate.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Councillor Gambioli?
I think we should be very careful about complicating this. So, let's not forget that staff were out for 6 months a year ago looking at this and doing workshops all over the community and gathering all the information that they are currently using to have created this part of the LAP proposal. So there's a lot of public consultation that's already gone into this. And of course, there's the, people who will always come out of the woodwork at the last minute and say, nobody ever told me this. But, this is staff's attempt at doing what we've asked them to do, put this LAP, this part of the LAP together based on the feedback from the community. Now, we put out what is proposed as first reading. We propose it for more than 5 weeks from now. So the public hearing is the formal and informal, really, if you want to, because we're going to get lots of emails between now and then as well, way for council to hear from the public on this item. So if we also want to go out and have a town hall meeting, that's fine. But I think that also risks confusing the issue. There's several issues here. There's, this part one, which is divided into the rental apartments, and this, which I call the bits and bobs legislation, everything between the rental apartments. Then we've got the commercial areas, which we haven't even started talking about yet. Then we've got the residential part, which we haven't even started talking about. I mean, at this rate, we're not going to get this LAP anywhere near done before the end of this council term. So, we can I'm afraid it's going to confuse people if we go out for a bit of a cowboy kind of attempt at good old town halls. The process is in place for a public hearing, and we've got 5 weeks from now till then for people to give us feedback and for people to give us feedback during the town hall. And then we go and do a town hall, and then we want to change it. I don't know. It's going to be super confusing for people.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
I think where my concern lies is this is the first time you've gone out and gotten all this public input, which is great, but you've put it together for the first time for people to see. And I actually think density and use are going to be of discussion moving forward and concern. So I am a little reluctant to do first reading. As Councillor Gambioli just pointed out, we've got to go on to the commercial area, deal with the apartment zoning. And I'm feeling uncomfortable with just dealing with this as a one-off. Did you have a comment, Mr. Hawkins?
Maybe just clarification. I'm not sure if I misheard, but to be clear, what's in front of council reflects both what was presented for this apartment area in July, what was published, I think it was early September, and what was discussed October. All that's different are the changes that council directed. And just to reiterate, those 3 large sites, more options for infill, so it could be strata, etc., not only rental infill. Specifying heights, it's really measuring, adding metrics, and then just providing more visualization. Sorry, it was provided before, but really now we've just tried to kind of color code that. So just to be clear that this isn't
Yeah.
new to council.
No, sorry, you're right, and I misspoke there. And what I mean is that, we've talked about allowing heights along Marine Drive and various other places, but now we're looking at all the possible sites together. And, what I'm seeing is a very different city or village that we now live in. And if we go, it's been a concern of mine from the beginning is understanding that there's special sites that do need that extra height for specific use. But I don't know. I'd like to hear what other members of council think.
Thank you. Councillor Watt?
Yeah, just in response to some of Councillor Gambioli's comments, I don't feel it's really a cowboy approach. And while, yes, we've had these sessions in the past with the public, I've certainly received a lot of feedback that it was difficult to get into the sessions and that a lot of people still don't feel that they've been heard. So I don't feel that there is any negative to pushing this out by just a couple more weeks and actually giving the community overall that opportunity.
Thank you, Councillor. Well, again, my concern goes down to the fact that we've got some areas where I think the density is not going to achieve what we think it's going to achieve. And so if we can't amend that later, I'd almost rather do it right now and put it out to the public and say, because the people I speak to, particularly around the Clyde Avenue property, who do want to see redevelopment occur there, recognize that 2FSR is not going to do it. Like they can do that today, and they're not doing it. So that's my fundamental worry. Mr. Bailey, any thought on that?
Mr. Mayor, I think the options here are obviously council can move forward with the readings as suggested. If council would like to hear from the public about not only height, but issues related to use, density, and tenure, and I think our recommendation would be that, and you do want to do that through some sort of public forum, then I would recommend that you direct that accordingly. I do want to be clear, though, it's not going to be a couple of weeks. I think what will happen is, this will be put on pause. We'll have to organize a public forum. Just finding a venue will take time, advertising, making sure that folks can come to that. And then we'll have to respond to those changes, if there are any, but I assume that there will be. And then we would want to, make sure that you're comfortable with those things. So you're legitimately setting this out, I think, for, it's not a couple of weeks. I think it's a couple months at best. So, but that if that's council's pleasure, that's okay too.
Well, now you're winning me over to Councillor Gambioli's position here, because we do want to get on with something here. But my fear is we go to a public hearing and we're going to hear from people that say, oh, why did you limit, our property and not that property? And if we can't amend that.
So, Mr. Mayor, again, you can't amend the policy, but as Mr. Hawkins said, assuming you approve that plan, every application that comes forward can apply for something different. We see it all the time. Right? And it would be an official community plan amendment and a zoning amendment, but that still exists. What this does, I think, as an OCP plan is it sets an overall tone, if you will, for the village. It says that the village isn't going to be a village of high rises. It sets a more moderate scale, a gentle infill on some of the sites where we're talking about sort of 3-story townhouses up to more of what I would call more of a mid-rise type of pattern in a 6 to 9 type of stories. And it sets that scale. That's the expectation for Ambleside. Now, if council were to receive a proposal that, blew everybody out of the water with, amazing urban design and some affordability, you could still do that through subsequent amendments. So those are your choices. But again, if council's comfort level is in, hearing from folks on use, density, and tenure prior to this first reading, then I wouldn't recommend giving this first reading tonight if you're expecting that you're going to have changes. But again, I think that can be managed through subsequent processes.
Well, you're winning Councillor Gambioli's position over here to me. I think it probably is better to have a public hearing and let the public speak then. And if they are. I'm just hoping that everybody who has wanted to give input gets a chance to do that. Councillor Snyder, what are your thoughts?
I must say, hearing from Mr. Bailey and Mr. Hawkins, the fact that it doesn't preclude a subsequent amendment by an application, that all it does is set a framework, and the fact that I personally have also been pushing to try and get this LAP in motion. So from hearing your responses, I'm a little bit more comfortable in moving forward with first reading tonight, particularly because this still does not preclude the public from still having further say in a public hearing. And like Councillor Gamblioli says, there has been plenty of opportunities over and information shared with the public as far as where things are going. I would be more so inclined now at this point to go ahead with first reading.
Thank you. Councillor Gambioli?
Well, I'll make the motion. And I would
Sorry,
just...
we'll let the last two speakers show.
Sure.
And then,
Oh, okay, yep.
Councillor Thompson?
Before the motion?
No, I'll make a comment when I make my motion, but yeah, you go home.
Yeah, I guess, I'm very keen to get this LAP done too, but my understanding it was to take out the guesswork for people that want to come in and do developments. And my real concern is setting expectation for people. And, as much as there might be not enough density in one area, there might be too much in another area, given what goes around them. I'm not sure. Anyway, I'll pass for now.
Thank you. Councillor Watt?
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, if we're talking a couple of months, 60 days, but this entire process is about the future of our community. And so I would rather get it right
No.
with fewer amendments down the road.
Well, that is what a public hearing process is for, though. And,
Yeah.
Councillor Gambioli?
Well, I'll make the motion. And I'll just say that, if we want to, we can try to outdo the District of North Vancouver by having, 7 subsequent public hearings and create a record for Metro Vancouver. We could go on. I would like to thank staff because I know that our staff have spent a lot of time and resources on this part of this Ambleside LAP project. The 3D designs and these really thoughtful revisions that we asked them to do in late October on this part. This provides a range of housing opportunities, rental, co-op, rent-to-own, strata. This is what we need in our community. This has been clearly laid out by our housing needs report and by many reports we've had before. So this is policy for the next 20 or 30 years, and it's not going to happen all at once. And as we've heard, there could be revisions for individual sites. So I am broadly happy, as staff have suggested we should be. I am broadly happy with this proposed official community plan bylaw amendment. So I will recommend that the proposed official community plan bylaw number 4985, 2018, amendment bylaw number 5291, 2024 be read a first time.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Thank you. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Contrary? Councillors Watt and Thompson contrary. The motion is carried.
And I will recommend that opportunities for consultation on the proposed official community plan amendment with persons, organizations, and authorities as outlined in the report dated January 19th, 2024, be endorsed as sufficient consultation for purposes of Section 475 of the Local Government Act.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Cassidy. Okay. Councillor Snyder, would you second the motion? Okay, discussion. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Contrary? So are you voting against that one? Okay. That means we will have a motion. Could I suggest someone makes a motion that
Sharon, were you contrary?
That's defeated.
that motion was defeated? So I think there is a desire on members of council's part to have another opportunity for a community forum. So, Mr. Bailey, help me out with this.
Yeah, I mean, with the 3-3 vote, that essentially fails. And so if that's the case, then I would recommend, and I'll just verbalize this, that staff be instructed to expeditiously host a town hall meeting on the Ambleside LAP, revised apartment area proposed OCP bylaw amendments, motion 1, and that 2, staff report back with any potential amendments following that town hall meeting.
Okay, is there a mover to that motion? Moved by Councillor Watt, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. Any discussion? Councillor Gambioli, your microphone's on. I'm not sure if you're...
Sorry, no,
Okay, I'll call a question on that motion. All those in favor? Contrary, the motion is carried. And then are we still at liberty to set the public hearing, Mr. Bailey?
Well, no, Mr. Mayor, I think given what we've said and that recommendation number 2 failed, that I don't think we can't set the public hearing.
I see. We'll move to item number 5, proposed miscellaneous bylaw changes. Councillor Gambioli.
I will, there's not a report. No, there's no presentation, no questions?
Yeah, there may be some questions on this, but let's put a motion to
Okay,
get it on the
so
floor.
I'll
if we
recommend
may.
that proposed zoning bylaw number 4662, 2010, amendment bylaw number 5270, 2024 be read a first time.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Snyder. And discussion. I think there were some questions. Councillor Thompson.
Not on this particular one, but should we wait till as we move each motion?
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'll call a question. All those in favor? Contrary carried. Councillor Gambioli, could I ask for a motion on the next one?
I'll recommend that proposed development procedures bylaw number 4940, 2017, amendment bylaw number 5271, 2024 be read a first, second, and third time.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Snyder, thank you. Any discussion on this one? Sorry. Yes, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I think I've got the right one here. Is 4940, is that right? The one we're working on?
4940, yes.
Yeah, so I just noticed that on page, let me just see, the chart on page 88, and I don't know if I'm reading this properly, but it's got what I'm assuming is a list of types of developments and then a distance, and the distance about the communications that happen around these projects.
Mayor to Councillor Thompson, that's correct. So that basically is the list that's in the development procedures bylaw that dictates how far the notification goes when projects are either delegated or not delegated to the Director of Planning. So that could be basically letting the public know if council is going to consider a permit. So that would be the area that we would notify in advance of the consideration of a permit by council, or alternatively, if it's a delegated type of permit, the area we would notify in advance of the director considering the permit.
Okay, so, okay, good, I'm reading it right. And I'm concerned a little bit about the first one, major development permits with or without variances, that only requires a 100-meter notification. And this comes up, this comes up quite a bit in our discussions about with big changes in areas, we should go wider than the 100-meter scope.
Through the Mayor to Councillor Thompson, so that part of the table is not proposed to be changed as part of this amendment. That is staying the same. If that was something that council wished to consider an amendment to widen the scope of that notification area, council could make an amendment to the development procedures bylaw to do so, but it's not part of this particular report at the moment.
Okay, so, okay. And
I could explain if it helps, because what we tend to do is when we're making amendments to these sections, rather than make like a one word change, we just take the table and swap it out. So what's actually changing here We're adding a category for minor development variance permits.
Yeah.
Right now, they're limited to single-family sites. What we're proposing to add is a category for minor development variance permits that would be then delegated to the director, where you have existing multifamily parkades in commercial buildings or multifamily buildings. Basically, our bylaw right now is very particular as far as parking dimensions and maneuvering aisles configuration. It would allow us to make minor modifications to that, which tends to happen once people get to the building permit stage. And at that point, you have to basically go back to council for a variance, but nobody even ever sees the change at street level. So it would allow us the flexibility to basically make minor variances for that type of thing. It's very limited. And basically the reason why this table is changing is in those very limited circumstances, we wouldn't do a neighborhood notification. Because in thinking about that, we felt that it's so minor and nobody even sees it. And we would still be working with, transportation engineers to make sure, cars still fit and everything still works. But it would just allow us the ability to consider those types of variances. So the only reason the table is changing is to change that one provision. Sorry for the very long explanation.
No, it's a great explanation.
Yeah, it is.
It's a great explanation, and it's a very needed change, because silly little things like this can hold up
Yeah.
processes unnecessarily, and the idea here is to be able to expedite, which is a very good idea.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that.
Thank you. Councillor Snyder?
My question is in regards to the sign bylaw amendment, which I can appreciate. And I
Sorry,
know-
but that'll be the next one.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's not
Yeah,
part
so
of.
we're just on the development
procedure
procedures.
Bylaw amendment?
Yeah, so if I may, I'm going to call a question on that. All those in favor? Contrary, carried. And now I'll ask Councillor Gambioli for the sign bylaw.
Recommend that proposed sign bylaw number 4499, 2007, amendment bylaw number 5295, 2024 be read a first, second, and third time.
Second.
Okay, and now a question?
Yes, sorry. Thank you. I jumped ahead of here a little bit. I can appreciate the reason for the signage on the second floors. I think that makes a lot of sense, particularly considering the changes that we're looking at as far as the occupancy of the street level and what have you. The one concern I had here, and maybe this answers the question, is the type of signage. I know it allows for awnings, it allows for sorry, grab it here. So it allows for awnings, fascia, canopies, projecting. Can you just clarify what projecting means? I'm assuming this prohibits neon lights and flashing lights and what have you.
There's separate restrictions on that type of signage in the bylaw, and we're not proposing to change any of that. Would a projecting sign, I asked the same question myself, actually. It's basically where it sort of sticks out vertically from a business.
Okay, so
you might see
projects
sort of
out
like a
from the
blade
building
signage.
as opposed to a projection
Exactly.
sort of thing where we have, because I think the last thing that anybody wants to see is driving around town and see flashing lights, second story buildings.
Unanimity on that, I am certain.
Yes, okay. Well, yes. Okay, so thank you. That helps clarify the protruding. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Watt?
Oh, sorry. Councillor Snyder asked my question.
Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary, carried. Thank you, Councillor Gambioli. The sustainable building policy.
Yeah, I'll recommend that sustainable buildings policy 0014 as approved on June 8th, 2020 be rescinded, and proposed replacement sustainable buildings policy 0014 attached as Appendix D to the January 18th, 2024 report titled Proposed Miscellaneous Bylaw Amendments and Changes to Sustainable Buildings Policy 0014 be approved.
Thank you.
So second.
Any discussion? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Yeah, in Appendix D, you talk about the Passive House expedited process, and it's page 97. And then my first question is, applicants must provide a design stage assurance letter from the Passive House accredited building certifier. What is that process like? Is that typical? Is this a new process? Is it a timely?
Through the Mayor to Councillor Thompson. So just for clarification, the way when we're amending a policy, you can't amend it, you just replace it. So that's, just for clarification, that section is not actually changing at all. So the only section that's proposed to be changed is actually 3.2. And the reason that is proposed, it's really what we would consider sort of a housekeeping amendment. And it basically just aligns this policy with the changes that council made in November of last year to increase the step code requirements and to move to the provincial zero carbon step code standard that's being used now versus the low carbon energy standard that was used prior. So that's just so council's awareness, that's the only change that's proposed. It really is quite housekeeping in nature. But in terms of the passive house question, so that process isn't changing. I mean, essentially what this is doing is it's relying on a qualified professional model to ensure that if someone is applying for expedited processing through that window, that we're relying on their qualified passive house professional to provide the documentation required so that, because our staff may not necessarily be the experts on that, they rely on a qualified professional to basically get the required documentation to ensure that they're meeting that standard to have access to that expedited processing.
Thank you. I'm learning a lot tonight. Do we currently just have expedited processes for passive homes?
That's the only avenue within this policy. Yes, there are other incentives available for individual applicants who are wishing to achieve a step higher. So that includes setback, setback exemptions, height exemptions, floor area exemptions. So there are a number of incentives available for other types of sustainable buildings technology when it comes forward. This is the only one in the policy that is allowing expediting.
Yeah, and I just asked because I know we've discussed in the whole improving or expediting the process of really trying to qualify some key reputable builders and assign that potential to expedite a process under certain guidelines. So we haven't even started developing that yet.
Well, we do have the CP program, which does allow for essentially what you're talking about. It is right now limited to commercial buildings, but that is where you could see time savings in the building permit process for complex projects where similarly you're relying on a qualified professional for staff so that there's less burden on staff as far as that detailed technical review that occurs through the conventional process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'll call a question. All in favor? Contrary carried. And Councillor Gambioli, one more time.
And finally, I will recommend that proposed zoning bylaw number 4662, 2010, amendment bylaw number 5270, 2024 be presented at a public hearing on February 26, 2024 at 7 p.m. in the Municipal Hall Council Chamber and via electronic communication facilities, WebEx video conferencing software, and that notice be given of the scheduled public hearing.
Thank you. Councillor Snyder, seconded. Any discussion? Question. All in favor? Contrary carried. And on to bylaws number 6, proposed fees. Councillor Snyder, please.
Yes, I'd like to recommend that the proposed fees and charges bylaw number 5251, 2023, amendment bylaw number 5285, 2024 be adopted.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Thompson, discussion. All in favor? Contrary carried. Thank you. Proposed official community plan amendment. Councillor Gambioli.
This is following our public hearing last week. The Salmon House development proposal. So I will recommend that proposed official community plan bylaw number 4985, 2018, amendment bylaw number 5280, 2023 be read a second time.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Snyder, question. All those in discussion. Councillor Cassidy.
So thank you very much. So I think it's a delightful project. However, as I addressed last week, I don't think that 23 parking spots, 8 of which could be given to staff, which would result in 15 parking spots, which in turn I'm assuming there's going to be some handicap parking spots. So potentially we're down to 9. So I don't think that's sufficient. And in account of the current number of parking spots beside the Salmon House, there's 61 spots, 3 of which are dedicated as handicap spots. So if you go down to Ski Lift Road, there is the potential for 10 parallel parking spots. But should you have tour buses come in the afternoon, I think the potential be there for 0 parking spots, unless you go much further along Ski Lift Road underneath the condominiums that they have there. So the long and the short of my point is, I don't want this project to go further until the issue of parking is addressed, because I do want that restaurant to succeed, and it has seating of 150 people. And current seating, I think, is 150 people still, with 61 parking spots. And in days of old, when I used to go there, when the restaurant was very active, you used to beg and plead to somebody in the skies that there would actually be a parking spot for you. So I think restricting ourselves at this point to the current suggested number really is creating the potential for a significant headache in that area. So I would like that addressed further before I would give the project my approval.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. Councillor Watt.
Yeah, I certainly echo Councillor Cassidy's comments, and I love this project and I want to love it in its entirety. But I think it's, while I can appreciate the reasons behind, I do feel that it's short-sighted to presume that most people will be either biking or walking or taking some form of a bus, be it private or public, up to the site. And because it is a new build, I believe it will be more successful than the Salmon House has been, in recent years or even the last decade. So I do feel that we're charging ahead too quickly, and it's just that one small, component that I feel needs to be ironed out.
Thank you. Councillor Snyder.
Yes, I believe that staff and the applicant did address the concerns on parking when presented with the project. I think it's also very presumptuous to assume that all 8 employees are going to be driving in and taking up 8 of the parking stalls there. I think that the building or the restaurant manager indicated that that was extremely unlikely to occur, where every staff member would be driving and taking a parking stall. I'm not sure that parking. I think this is a great project, and we've had traffic engineers study it, who provided a report suggesting that it was a reasonable amount. I know that staff actually specifically even requested a smaller number of parking stalls. I'm assuming that I'm no parking expert, that's for sure, and I don't know how you're able to qualify yourselves, but when all of the experts say that they believe that it's sufficient parking, and there is other parking in the area. I also haven't heard anywhere in any of these proposal that people are going to be riding their bikes or taking public transportation to this location. I don't think that was ever brought up in the presentation, that that's how people were going to be getting to the restaurant. I believe that people were assumed to be arriving and parking. And yes, there are some tour buses that travel the area, and hopefully they're all there to go to the restaurant. That would make a great place to take a busload of people to dining in Vancouver, but I don't see that happening in nighttime, when you would assume that it's going to be a little bit more busy. So my comments on the topic.
Thank you. Councillor Gambioli.
No, Councillor Schneider just said everything I was going to say. Thanks.
I certainly respect and appreciate your concerns, and it is our desire to have this as a very successful amenity, because that restaurant in that location is beautiful. I went up and had a look, and I think that staff could very easily reline the parking that is on Ski Lift and have it as angle parking. It would double the number of spots, and as a result, there's far more parking around this building than there is virtually any other restaurant I can think of. I think it's going to be workable. Anyway, Councillor Watt.
Sorry, Councillor Snyder, I think that I must have misheard it last week. I thought he did, the developer or owner did say that staff typically do drive. Maybe I misheard that. Okay.
Who knows? But I would suspect that a lot of the people that work in the restaurant would take public transit. The problem is, really, you've only got one option. You can defeat this tonight and send it back. I don't know, honestly, I don't know how they'd redesign it. I don't know how you can get more parking on that spot. No, there is certainly room for parking on ski lift. There is the pullout, and right now it's parallel parking, but it's a very wide area. It would be easy to make that angled parking, and I think there's a lot of parking there. So unfortunately, I don't see any solution. If you don't like the development because you don't think it has enough parking, then you need to defeat it. And the applicant may or may not come back. I don't know if they can redesign it. Sorry, Councillor Cassidy.
Thank you. So I beg to differ. I don't know how these individuals who are going to eat at this restaurant or who are going to work at this restaurant are going to get there, because to the best of my knowledge, there is no public transportation up to there. So when they spoke of buses coming there, they meant tour buses. And those tour buses will be going in the afternoon if they're going to dine, it may well be in the afternoon or in a gorgeous summer evening. And when you're up there with those tour buses, either one or two, there's very little parking in the immediate under vicinity of the restaurant. There's 61 spots right now. I don't know how you think staff is going to get there, and I would say the managing director, the general manager, the head cook, whatever, is going to tell you what you want to hear so they can proceed with the project. I worked in restaurants. There's no way you can walk there. Hitchhiking is dead and gone. They're going to be driving there. So I do like the project, but I think one of our major issues is always parking, and I don't think this restaurant should be spilling out onto Folkestone Way and onto Ski Lift Road. That's just what I think. I think they can up the numbers. How they're going to do it, I don't know, but they can do it. And if they're going to go along a ski lift and make various changes, then they should be paying for it, not us.
Thank you. Councillor Gambioli.
Well, the only thing I'll add is that, what's been overlooked here is that this proposal is beyond the restaurant, is about housing. This is about creating 8 new 3-bedroom apartments as rentals. And this community needs new housing. So I don't know, I, for one, ran on a platform of creating more attainable housing. And I didn't run on a platform of being worried about, a couple of parking spots. So that's the important part of this proposal, is it includes new housing, which we desperately need.
Thank you. Councillor Snyder.
Just in response, people wonder how you get to work there. There's a lot of different ways to get to work, and I know that a lot of those in the restaurants, because I've been involved in a couple of organizations that have had issues with restaurants and staffing. Carpooling is a very major issue and very, very important in running most restaurants nowadays, especially if you have limited parking. We have other places in West Vancouver that are very limited in parking. I draw an example of Aseta Cafe. I think they have 11 parking spots out front there, and it's one of the most successful restaurants, coffee shops in the neighborhood with very limited. People make it work. There are ways, there's Lyft, there's Ubers, there's all sorts of different ways also of getting to the restaurant. And if you happen to have 2 tour buses there, being a past tour bus driver, they fit 44 passengers. So if you've got 2 full tour buses, you've got 88 passengers, you've just filled up over half the restaurant. So that would be great revenue for the restaurant, and I wish them the very best.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I think the project's great, and I'm really excited about it. And it's a great housing opportunity and housing option. Parking is an issue, though, and I think, if staff encourage them to reduce the parking, there's probably room to introduce more parking, and I hope that's the case. It's not going to put me off of voting for the project, but I do think it's a concern that should be tried to work out between now and when they get voted on.
Well, certainly our staff can work on the parking on ski lift. That there's a way there, in my view, very simply to quite dramatically increase the number of parking. And I do respect the views of Councillor Cassidy and Watt, but I think it can be and will have to be overcome. Councillor Watt?
I just wanted to point out that with the SETA, you've got a bus line and a lot of cyclists frequent that. That's all.
They put an angle in.
You have parking at the front of it, you have parking at the back of it, so you have that opportunity. Again, as Councillor Watt identified, you do have buses. And if you park along a ski lift, it is absolutely pitch dark along that area of the road. So are these people going to be walking along gravel? Are we going to put in a sidewalk? Are we going to put in lighting? What are we going to do to accommodate them walking back to the Salmon House? I think it's great as far as the project and the housing is concerned. Their issue, and they've got sufficient parking. Their issue is the restaurant for 150 people with 23 parking spots. Make 3 of those parking spots handicapped, you now have 20. And I don't know how many staff wish to carpool to work. I don't know, but that's not my issue. I'm just saying they do not have sufficient parking. In fact, the amount of parking they have is actually a joke.
Thank you. The question's been called. All those in favor? Contrary? Councillors Watt and Cassidy. Contrary, the motion is carried. And then...
Okay, I will recommend that the proposed official community plan bylaw number 4985, 2018, amendment bylaw number 5280, 2023 be read a third time.
Thank you. Second. Call the question. All in favor? Contrary, as recorded. Thank you. Councillor Gambioli.
I will recommend that proposed zoning bylaw number 4662, 2010, amendment bylaw number 5281, 2023 be read a second time.
Call a question. All those in favor? Contrary? Councillors Watt and Cassidy recorded as contrary.
And recommend that proposed zoning bylaw number 4662, 2010, amendment bylaw number 5281, 2023 be read a third time.
Thank you. Question. All in favor? You put your hand up too quickly. We're going to record. Don't worry. I'll record you as contrary. Thank you. And finally, thank you, Councillor Gambioli.
And recommend that proposed land use contract development area agreement 1957 discharge bylaw number 5282 2023 be read a second and third time.
Thank you. Question. All in favor? Contrary? Recorded. Thank you. Consent agenda items. Councillor Thompson.
Yep, I'd like to recommend that consent agenda items as follow be approved. Item 9.1 regarding 2023 asset management update, and item 9.2 regarding delegation requests.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy. Thank you. Any discussion? Question. All in favor? Contrary? Carried. Thank you. Could I have a motion, Councillor Watt, on the adoption of committee meetings, please? We're looking at item number 10.
Yeah, no, sorry. I had my name on the one above. Yep. Apologies. I'd like to recommend that the following minutes be adopted as circulated. December 12, 2023, Public Art Advisory Committee meeting, and December 12, 2023, Community Grants Committee meeting.
Thank you. Question. All in favor? Contrary? Carried. We have an item number 11, a notice of motion, which is put forward by Councillors Lambert and Thompson, which will be discussed at our next meeting, February 12th. This is truly a historic motion, one that I completely support, and I think this sends a real message to everyone that West Vancouver is going to protect the beautiful heritage mountainside. We're densifying in Metro Vancouver, but we won't be a wonderful place to live if we don't have great we don't preserve our wonderful outdoor recreational space. And this is one step that the council can do. This will see the creation of a true legacy park. So excited by that. Item number 12, if I could ask Councillor Cassidy, please. Oh, sorry, did I miss something? No, that's a notice of motion, so we don't need a motion on that.
Speak to it, or no? No?
Oh, sorry, did you, sorry.
Mayor Sager, today is just to give notice about
It's
debate.
just,
which
yeah,
should
there's
happen.
no
Thank you.
discussion on it this week.
All right.
That will be
Thank
at our next council meeting. So we'll move to the animal control and licensing bylaw. Thank you. Councillor Cassidy.
Pardon me, but we've got a motion is number 12, and number 13.
You know what? I'm
Is
looking at one
bikes.
that, sorry, because we got an amended agenda.
Which is the bike lane.
Sorry, wait a minute, what happened? Okay. Thank you, okay. Excuse me just a minute, sorry, I've got to stop for a second here. Are we looking at?
We just did.
Oh, it's a notice, I'm sorry, right, there are two notices of motion. Oh my gosh. Okay, thank you. We'll go to item number 13, Councillor Thompson, and thanks for helping support this.
Yes, I believe this is your brainchild, and I'm pretty excited to support you here. I'd like to recommend that the District of West Vancouver Council requests the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure to prioritize the implementation of a protected bike lane on Cypress Bowl Road.
Thank you. I'm very happy to say I'm meeting with the Minister of Tourism February 15th to discuss biking infrastructure, and I'm optimistic we're going to get strong support from the Minister. Councillor Cassidy.
Could I also ask you, while you're in that conversation, to perhaps ask them if we can have some monies to underground the wiring, assistance with undergrounding the wiring in Horseshoe Bay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was going to give a little report on that at the end here, but that's all good. I'm going to call a question. All those in favor? Contrary, carried. Now, under reports, let me tell you, on Friday at the Metro Board meeting, I had the wonderful opportunity of asking the CEO of Hydro for their support with our undergrounding in Horseshoe Bay. He happened to be there making a presentation, and I thought it was such a wonderful opportunity. And in front of all of the other mayors of Metro Vancouver, he said, I'll be on this. So it was a good day for us on Friday. I take him at his word that he will see what he can do to help out the situation. So that's my short report. Anyone else want to give a report? Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, it just dawned on me. Last week I went to the opening reception at the West Vancouver Art Museum called Who's Your Daddy? And it's really quite a remarkable, unique exhibition put together by a young master's student from UBC that's been working with the museum for about a year. And she collected two other of her friends on the North Shore just to take out of the archives all the various things that represented various times and things that happened through West Vancouver, and then takes a look at the future and the things we should be focusing on. So it's on till March 2nd, and I highly recommend you take a peek at it because it is so unique, and it's also the exhibition that kicked off our 30th year anniversary.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Watt.
Yeah, so last week, Councillor Gambioli and I see your mic is on as well. Were you wanting to speak to
Oh,
that?
she's next.
Oh, you said Councillor Watt.
I know.
Oh, yeah, no, okay. No, I know, but we were at the same meeting, so I was going to offer it to Nora.
Oh,
Okay. No, I was just going to pass it over, but we had the opportunity to be at the new Art Advisory Art Committee meeting, and that's the new overarching committee that encompasses, somebody's trying to make me laugh, that encompasses the Art Museum, Public Art Advisory Committee, and also the Community Grants Committee. Those 3 committees I was on over the course of the last year, and it's really exciting to see how the vision is coming together and all the members in the group. And a real shout out to the new members of that committee and also those that have come over from the other 3 committees. And I think it's going to have a real impact on the future of the arts in our community. So I look forward to the subsequent committee meetings with Councillor Gambioli.
Thank you, Councillor Watt. Councillor Gambioli.
And that reminded me that Friday I went to the opening of the Witness Blanket, which is an art show at the library that I recommend everyone catch. There was an opening reception, and it's a really important piece of work. So it probably would take you half an hour to look through at minimum. So next time you're at the library, plan to, I think it's there for a month, but it's a real coup for us to have it. Apparently we've been waiting in line for about 2 years to get it. So it's a very big installation. It's about the size of this whole horseshoe, and it's very, very impressive. So I recommend that everyone checks it out at the library.
Thank you very much.
It's wood, not fabric.
And thanks for covering that, Councillor Gambioli. As acting mayor, I'm grateful that you were able to attend. Thank you. Any other reports? No. Oh, I'll call it. Can I have a motion to receive the reports? Councillor Thompson?
So moved.
Seconded by Councillor Cassidy. Call the question. All in favor? Contrary carried. And finally, are there any public questions this evening?
We have no one signed up to speak so far, Mayor Singer.
Okay, well, thank you all very much for joining us this evening. I'll have a motion to adjourn. Councillor Snyder, seconded. Councillor Gambioli. Question, all in favor? Contrary carried. See you February 12th. Thanks.